Right now, there's a houseboat sitting in a marina that costs less than a used pickup truck, and whoever scrolls past it today is going to think about it for the rest of their life. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. It's the most predictable thing in the entire boat market. The moment you start looking, the big numbers hit first. 400,000, $1.5 million, one listing out there sitting at $15 million. So people assume the whole dream is for rich people, and they close the tab. That's mistake number one. Because on those same platforms, in that same price search, there are real houseboats listed under $7,000. The average sale lands around $170,000. But the true floor sits far lower, and almost nobody scrolls that far down. Today you're getting 5 of them. And the one thing that decides whether cheap becomes brilliant or becomes regret. Here's the first one. And it might be the most underrated boat on the entire water. The catamaran cruiser Lil Hobo, 8 feet wide, 31 feet long. And the exact thing that makes people skip it is the same thing that makes it genius. It's trailerable. To most buyers, trailerable sounds like a downgrade. It sounds small. It sounds like a toy compared to a full-sized moored houseboat. So they keep scrolling, looking for something bigger, something that looks the part. What they miss is that this boat does something almost nothing else on the water can do. It's 2 homes in one. You tow it like an RV to a campsite on Friday, then float it into a hidden cove on Saturday. Same boat. No marina that owns you. No single lake you're chained to for the next 10 years. This isn't some fly-by-night builder either. The company has been producing this exact model for more than 3 decades, selling factory direct, which means the price you pay isn't stacked with a dozen middlemen taking their cut along the way. The hull is fiberglass, easy to clean, built to handle salt water without flinching. And unlike a lot of boats in this price range, they'll actually finance it for you. Here's where it gets interesting, because the reason people regret skipping this one isn't about the boat itself. It's about the freedom they never got to have. The buyer who spends $40,000 on a moored houseboat gets tied to one dock, one view, one horizon for years. Meanwhile, the person who picked up the trailerable Lil Hobo for a fraction of that price drove it to 3 different states in a single summer. Same dream, a quarter of the money. And that gap, that space between what people spent and what they actually got to experience, is exactly where the regret lives. But mobility is only one kind of value on this list. The next boat nobody looks twice at plays a completely different game. This is the boat that actually looks like a boat. The one that feels like a proper floating cabin instead of a platform bolted onto pontoons. The Gibson cabin yacht. And the story behind why it gets ignored is half the reason it's so underrated. Gibson has been building houseboats since 1968. Then 2008 hit, the recession tore through the marine industry, and production simply stopped. For years, anyone searching for a new Gibson found nothing. They assumed the brand was dead and moved on with their search. That's exactly what most buyers still believe today. Except in 2017, a couple bought the company, moved the entire operation to South Dakota, and started building again. So now you've got this strange situation playing out. Thousands of these boats are still floating on lakes across the country right now. Owners love them, and yet the brand fell completely off the radar for almost a decade. That's how a genuinely good boat quietly becomes invisible to an entire generation of buyers. Ask the owners themselves and they'll tell you the cabin yacht is honestly all the boat most people actually need. 2 full-size beds, a real kitchen with real appliances, not a camp stove bolted to a counter, carpet underfoot instead of bare fiberglass. It's not flashy, and it never once tried to be. While other builders chased loud, in-your-face styling to catch your eye on a listing page, Gibson kept the outside simple and quiet, and put all the real money into what's below deck, where it actually counts day to day. And because it isn't flashy, it sits on the used market longer than it should. The price keeps dropping while people scroll right past it looking for something shinier. And then one day, somebody who actually did their homework buys a boat worth far more than what they paid for it. Everyone else who scrolled past that same listing that morning will never know how close they came. Now stop for a second, because there's a pattern forming here, and you might have already caught it. These boats aren't bad boats. They're boats that fail the first impression test. Too small. Too plain. Wrong category in someone's head. And that brings us to the third one, which gets ignored for a reason that's almost funny. Nobody thinks a pontoon is a houseboat. The Sun Tracker style party cruiser, the wide, flat aluminum pontoon with a cabin built right on top, gets dismissed instantly because the buyer already has a picture in their head of what a houseboat is supposed to look like, and a pontoon just doesn't match it. So they keep scrolling, past boat after boat, looking for something that fits the mental image instead of the actual need. Meanwhile, these aluminum pontoon houseboats show up on the used market constantly, and cheap, simply because so many of them were built over the years. Aluminum is light, it's tough, and it handles being run up onto a rocky shoreline far better than fiberglass ever will. For a calm lake or a slow river, which is exactly where the vast majority of people actually want to spend their time, this is often the most practical boat on the entire list. And here's the quiet part nobody talks about. A used pontoon houseboat in this price range gives you the deck space, the sleeping room, and the open floor plan that people pay six figures for on a fancier hull with a nicer name attached to it. It's the same lifestyle, the same weekends on the water, without the price tag built around appearances. The buyers who get over the look and buy on the actual merits end up with more usable boat per dollar than almost anyone else on this list. Meanwhile, the ones who needed it to look like a yacht, who needed that first impression, end up spending 3 times as much for the exact same weekend on the exact same water. If you're getting value out of this, the next two are the ones that really separate the people who watch from the people who actually act, because these last 2 boats don't just get overlooked for how they look. They get overlooked for reasons that sound, on paper, like they should be deal breakers. And that's exactly why almost nobody else is bidding on them right now. The fourth boat everyone ignores is a used Stardust cruiser. And to understand why this one matters, you have to know a little history that almost nobody bothers to look up. 3 of the biggest names in houseboat history, Stardust, Somerset, and Thoroughbred, all eventually merged into a single company. Together, those 3 brands carry a legacy of more than 60 years on the water. These were the boats that built the entire golden era of houseboating. The boats families grew up on all through the 70s and 80s, back when the category was still young and exciting. And here's the opportunity hiding inside that history. Because the individual brand names got folded together under one company, the original Stardust cruisers still floating out there on lakes today get listed by owners who simply want them gone. No brand loyalty pushing the price up. No nostalgia marketing driving bidding wars. Just solidly built, spacious boats from a company that helped invent the entire category, sitting on owner listings and marina docks for a fraction of what a new build would cost. The catch is that they're old, so the surface stuff looks tired. Faded fabric, dated paneling, a galley that practically screams the exact year it was built the second you step inside. And that cosmetic tiredness is exactly what scares buyers off, even though the bones underneath are often excellent, built to a standard a lot of newer boats don't even bother matching anymore. The person who can see past a worn-out interior, who understands that fabric and paint are the cheapest things to change on any boat, walks away with serious square footage for a tiny price. They're not buying a museum piece. They're buying decades of proven construction wrapped in a look they can update themselves for a few $100s. And that's the pattern again, showing up for the 4th time in a row. It was never about the boat being bad. It's about a boat that looks old getting judged the same way people judge anything old. without anyone stopping to check what's actually holding it together underneath. And the fifth boat is the one worth loving the most, because by every normal rule of buying anything, it shouldn't even still be a smart choice. Adventure craft and the small trailerable builders in the same family, like Nomad and Travel Wave. Here's the wild part. Adventure craft houseboats aren't even in production anymore. The company stopped building them. By every normal rule of buying anything, that should make this a terrible choice. A brand that doesn't make the product anymore. No new units rolling off a line. No dealer down the street to call when something breaks. And yet there's a loyal community of owners who keep these boats alive. They keep talking to each other. They keep them running. They keep the used market healthy, trading parts, sharing fixes, passing boats along from one owner to the next instead of letting them rot in a backyard somewhere. So a discontinued boat that everyone assumes is a dead end turns out to be exactly the opposite. It's a small, tight, knowledgeable circle of people who will actually help you find one and help you keep it floating for years after you buy it. These trailerable boats run small, usually under 30 feet, somewhere between 3,000 and 9,000 pounds, which means you can pull one straight out of the water and tow it home behind a pickup truck without needing a special rig. And because the market for used trailerable boats stays steady year after year, if you buy one and later want to move up to something bigger, selling it again isn't the nightmare people fear it'll be. It's one of the few boats on this entire list you can buy, use for years, and sell again without losing your shirt. So that's the 5. The trailerable Lil Hobo, the underestimated Gibson cabin yacht, the misjudged aluminum pontoon, the tired but tough used Stardust, and the discontinued adventure craft with the cult following behind it. 5 boats that get scrolled past every single day by people chasing something shinier. And if the video stopped right here, you'd walk away thinking the lesson is simply buy cheap. It's not. Because now we get to the part I promised you at the very start, the part that decides whether the budget houseboat becomes the best decision of your life or the regret sitting right there in the title. Because the boat was never the expensive part. The water is. A slip runs $300 to over $1,000 a month, sometimes more if you're living aboard. Maintenance eats 5 to 10% of the boat's value every year. Financing under $15,000 is harder than people think. The regret was never the price. It's buying the wrong cheap boat for the wrong reasons, skipping the honest questions before you fall in love. So go scroll to the bottom of the listings, past the pretty ones, down where the prices fall through the floor. That boat is already out there. The only thing undecided is who claims it.